Honorable former Justice of the Supreme Court of India, Shri Bose, presently positioned as Director, National Judicial Academy. Brief but very thought-provoking address. I have known on the judicial side Justice Bose when he was in Jharkhand High Court and then a judge of the Supreme Court. Polite, persuasive, suave, and reflecting a sense of the qualities of the state of West Bengal. A proud son of that part of our country where the capital is known rightly as City of Joy, and by any reckoning an epicenter of culture and creativity. His acceptance of this assignment is at considerable financial inconvenience apart from personal, because we are living in times where retired judges are never retired because of arbitral process, keeping them engaged, and the engagement continues to be at a level far more intense in the judicial work they hindered. I am indeed grateful that he has thought it wise that I share my thoughts on this very important platform. This platform is unique. It has potential to emerge as a think tank. It affords opportunity to brainstorm beyond scratching the surface. It, according to me, can operate as a diagnostic clinic for the ailments our institutions are afflicted. I am therefore extremely sanguine, full of optimism and confidence that under his stewardship, this very important institution will be able to achieve the objectives. And the task before Justice Bose could not be more daunting, challenging, and contemporaneously relevant. Shri Jain, Chief Secretary State of Madhya Pradesh, had an important stint in the Union government as a secretary, one of the top bureaucrats, but I can worship. He is very keen to find resolution. He doesn't allow a problem, a transgression, or a dispute to be put on the back burner. I have personally seen it. I have all admiration for him. But nostalgically speaking, when in 2002, this important institution saw light of the day, Shri Jain happened to be district magistrate, and now he is positioned as Chief Secretary. I am therefore confident and hopeful that the state government, with he being the Chief Secretary, would play a critically vital, significant affirmative role to ensure that this institution scales greater heights. I am personally grateful to the two other honorable gentlemen because along with me they share the prefix Vice. Professor Surya Prakash, Vice Chancellor, National Law Institute, University, and Professor Suresh Kumar Jain, Vice Chancellor, Barkatullah University. Their presence makes one thing very significant. It is all business. There can be no transgressions. Distinguished audience, this is my maiden visit to this prestigious university while I hold the office of Vice President of the country, and by that virtue I happen to be ex officio Chairman of the Council of States, commonly referred to as the Rajya Sabha. My recent public life started in 2019 when the Honorable President on 20th of July signed a warrant appointing me Governor of State of West Bengal. It was an act of providence because that happened to be birthday of my wife. Another providential convergence, it was 50th anniversary of Neil Armstrong landing on the moon. But for me, it was painful because for 3 decades as senior advocate and for 4 decades as advocate, I was with the jealous mistress, the legal profession. The jealous mistress left me and my wife got liberated. So my active connect with the institution was virtual, not physical. But I can assure anyone who is listening to me, I jealously pondered the jealous mistress, and I thoroughly relished while being an advocate for about 10.5 years, and thereafter senior advocate for 3 decades. Given this background, I will not fail in availing an opportunity on this platform to reflect on issues that are dominating discourse at the present in the largest democracy on the planet, the oldest, the most vibrant, and home to 1/6 of humanity. I would reflect on constitutional institutions that define democracy, that is, legislature, judiciary, executive. But before that, let me advert, democracy has been evolved and defined by 2 words. One, expression. You must have right to express. If that right is compromised, throttled, or diluted, democracy gets thinner and thinner and thinner. It is your right of expression that makes you most important factor in democracy, stakeholder. One facet of expression is right to vote. But more important is to express your views, your point of view. You participate in governance, administration, by having a voice of expression. And this expression is not standalone. This expression requires dialogue. Expression without dialogue means my way or no way. Dialogue is nothing but reflection, either approval of your expression or the other point of view. My own experience says that in life, the other point of view is not only important but more often than not the correct point of view. But lending consideration to the other point of view is quintessential for humanity's development. Because consideration does not mean you concede a point. Consideration means your respect for all points of view, and you can find a way out. If the 2 points cannot be reconciled, herein comes the human spirit of cooperation, convergence, coordination. A difference of opinion should not result in confrontation. A difference of opinion must ignite and urge in us to converge, to find a common ground. And sometimes yielding is better part of discretion. In this backdrop, let me focus on state of the nation. I say so because I had the occasion to state of the nation, to see the state of the nation in 1989 when I was elected to Parliament for the first time. Also when I became a Union Minister then, and I had the occasion to see the state of the nation now or for last decade or so. In last few years, as a consequence of affirmative governance, innovative policies, the nation is filled with an environment of hope and possibility. That can be seen all around, it is all pervading. We have witnessed economic upsurge that is being accoladed by global institutions like the International Monetary Fund or the World Bank. Economic growth of this country amongst large economies is outstanding because we are at peak. This economic growth has fueled a phenomenal infrastructure growth which everyone comes across. Unimaginable, beyond dreams, people-centric policies have led to ground realization of facilities that are very wholesome to the people at large. Every house with electric connection, with toilet, with cooking gas availability, with banking inclusion, and ongoing schemes like pipe water, roof solar schemes. There has been hand-holding those who are in the last row by way of making available resources to them, including affordable housing or Pradhan Mantri An Yojana. But what has impressed our young people and the public at large is deep digital penetration. The technological accessibility and adaptation has been massive, stunning the world. This has enhanced both easy service delivery and ease of governance, ease of business. Once there was a system when, because of lack of transparency, lack of accountability, power corridors were infested with agents known as liaison. They corrupted the system. Technology has neutralized that. And therefore, to cut it short, no country in the world has grown so fast as Bharat in last few years. Now, this development, which the people have tested, has converted our Bharat at the moment as the most aspirational nation in the world. And imagine a 1/6 of humanity is in high aspirational gear. There are chances of people getting restive or getting in restlessness. But if unleashed, this nuclear energy can take us to great heights. And that is a challenge before institutions that define our democracy. And this calls for optimal performance by pillars of democracy: the legislature, the judiciary, and the executive. Friends, time constraint permits me only suggestive focus, and for the kind of intelligence that is there in the audience, a suggestion or even a subtle suggestion will make my point. India's democratic framework did not start in 1947. We have several millennia of rich jurisprudence, and that demands careful preservation of institutional autonomy and mutual respect amongst its pillars. Jurisdictional respect and deference requires that these institutions operate within defined constitutional bounds while maintaining cooperative dialogue, keeping national interest ever in mind. The principle of separation of powers necessitates respect for clearly demarcated responsibilities to prevent institutional overreach by one over the other. Legislature to begin with, because I am directly connected with this in my position as chairman of the Council of States. Our parliament, once a theatre of profound dialogue and debate, has yielded to disruption and disturbance. You all are aware. The deliberative dignity envisioned by our constitution makers stands compromised today, with partisan interpretations even on matters of national security prevailing. How can we ever sacrifice nation-first principle? How can we relegate national interest to any other interest? Friends, Parliament's transformation from deliberative dignity to disruptive discord virtually threatens democratic essence. Let me remind you of the Constituent Assembly that painstakingly, over 18 sessions, is spread over little less than 3 years, dealt with issues that were highly contentious. They were divisive, but there were no disruptions. Tough issues and tough terrain was negotiated with the spirit to find solution through dialogue, debate, consensus, give and take. Through dialogue at the highest order, these institutions now must achieve in contemporary times synergy in serving greater national causes, and while doing so, they can maintain their distinct identities. Friends, I was inviting your attention that the high standards set by the Constituent Assembly are today compromised. How can we allow in temples of democracy disturbance and disruption? That means the public representatives are not mindful of their constitutional ordinance. How can national interest be overtaken by partisan concerns? How can confrontational stance and often of irretrievable nature can show exit door to consensus? I urge all through this platform to be cognizant of alarmingly worrisome potential and dangers inherent in such kind of derailments and undermining sanctity of parliamentary institutions. To sacrilege such institutions is to taint and tarnish democracy, and this indicates lack of commitment to national development. Time for us to be in togetherness, in tandem, to get a reprieve from this malady. I said, I am in a diagnostic clinic of the highest order. Coming to judiciary, being a member of the bar, I have association. I am therefore a foot soldier. Lawyers are extension of the bench. They work in togetherness with mutual respect, admiration. Judgments are as good as the assistance of the bench. It is one of the factors. Like legislature, the judicial architecture also faces critical structural changes. When I became a parliamentary affairs minister in 1990, I went to that room from where Supreme Court operated. For many years it operated from the Parliament building. There were 8 judges. They were not sitting on all days because there was no work. More often than not, all the 8 judges sat together. Gradually we know the situation that is now, and rightly reflected by Justice Bose. But I invite to steer your minds on one aspect. When the strength of the Supreme Court was 8 judges, under Article 145(3) there was a stipulation that interpretation of the Constitution will be by a bench of 5 judges or more. Please note, when the strength was 8, it was 5. And Constitution allows the highest court of the land to interpret the Constitution. You interpret what is interpretable. In the guise of interpretation, there can be no arrogation of authority. That being the situation, without reflecting more, for fear of being understood or misunderstood, understood in one pretext or misunderstood in another pretext, we need to urgently focus to ensure that the essence and spirit which the founding fathers had in mind in under Article 145(3) about interpreting the Constitution must be respected. If I analyze arithmetically, they were very sure interpretation will be by majority of judges, because strength then was 8. That 5 stands as it is, and the number is more than 4-fold. I seek to recall observations made in maiden speech imparted by a former Chief Justice of India, Shri Gagoi, as nominated member of Rajya Sabha. Nominated by the Honorable President of India in the distinguished category of 12. The former Chief Justice of India, as sitting member of Rajya Sabha in the nominated category which is elevated, reflected, I seek to quote him, "The law may not be to my liking, but that does not make it arbitrary. Does it violate the basic feature of the Constitution? I have to say something about the basic structure. There is a book by former Solicitor General of India, Andhya Arjuna, on the Keshwanand Bharti case. Having read the book, my view is that the doctrine of the basic structure of the Constitution has a debatable, very debatable jurisprudential basis. I would not say anything more than this, unquote. My views on this are too well known. The basic structure doctrine debate reflects our institutional tendency to question foundations while ignoring structural cracks. Slightly digressing, we are a country where iconic status is accorded on parameters that are baffling. We don't scrutinize or probe. And that reputation becomes a serious cause of concern because we label someone jurist without proper analysis. Time for us to give it up. In as much as I have reflected on occasions, we can't allow others to calibrate us. Another facet, and I try to make it as low decibel as possible. The judiciary's public presence must be primarily through judgments. Judgments speak for themselves. Judgments carry weightage. And under the Constitution, if the judgment emanates from the highest court of the land, it has binding precedential value. Any other mode of expression other than through judgments avoidably undermines institutional dignity. Again, with the total command that I have, I exercise restraint to assert I seek revisitation of the present state of affairs so that we get back to the groove, a groove that can give sublimity to our judiciary. When we look around the globe, we never find judges reflecting the way we see here on all issues. I must indicate there is a soothing development. Of late, the storm is widening. Calm is prevailing. I hope it continues, because we really had a very stormy session, echoed in the country, outside the country, on issues, and on occasions so personalized. Through public domain reflections, that sanctity of the highest court was not compromised when a judgment of the Supreme Court was called, that it is final because it is the last one. Someday, my view will prevail. Sir, I have known you from a distance. In the High Court at Jharkhand, even if I did not have a case in your court, I used to sit in the last row. There is an aura of the court. Judgments are read, and they will be read by generations that come. When institutions compete instead of complement, democracy pays the price. For constitutional democracy to survive, institutions must learn to differ without disrupting and dissent without destroying. Democracy thrives not on institutional isolation, but in coordinated autonomy. Indisputably, institutions contribute productively and optimally while working in their respective domains. Out of deference, I will not advert to instances, except observe that executive governance by judiciary is being frequently noticed and discussed nearly in all quarters. Sir, we are a sovereign nation. Our sovereignty resides in the people. The Constitution given by the people makes this sovereignty inviolable. Executive governance reflecting the will of the people is constitutionally sanctified. Accountability is enforceable when executive roles are performed by elected government. Governments are accountable to legislature and periodically accountable to the electorate. But if executive governance is arrogated or outsourced, enforceability of accountability will not be there. Exclusively governance lies with the government. Sir, with utmost respect, any information from any source, in the country or outside, from legislature or judiciary, is antithetical to constitutionalism and certainly not in consonance with fundamental premise of democracy. Sir, executive governance by judicial decree is a constitutional paradox that largest democracy on the planet cannot afford any longer. When institutions forget their bounds, democracy is remembered by the wounds this forgetfulness imparts. The Constitution envisioned harmony, synergetic approach, to be in sync. Surely, a concert of chaos was never in the contemplation of the founding fathers of the Constitution. Constitutional consultation without institutional coordination is mere constitutional tokenism. So let me give one illustration. When two words were interpreted for the first time, consultation and concurrence, and it was indicated that consultation will be concurrence by a judicial directive. Those who engaged in this interpretation conveniently did not advert to Article 370 where both the words are used. Article 370 of the Constitution, which is fortunately, because it was the only temporary article of the Constitution, uses both consultation and concurrence. How can the two words forget the lexicon premise of it? Used in the Constitution, I have distinguished people on the academia side. Be so taken. I have often said, when it comes to gender discrimination, that gender discrimination, if it is obvious, is tolerable. But when gender discrimination is subtle, it is very painful. That has to be remedied. Similarly, the line between judicial activism and overreach is thin, but the impact on democracy is thick. Sir, you are aware of a case decided, if I am not mistaken, by Justice Vivian Bose. The line between may be true and must be true is very thin. It has to be negotiated by unimpeachable evidence of great veracity. Similarly, the situation when we come to revenue matters, tax planning, tax evasion, tax avoidance. Line is very thin. Justice Desai, while sitting with Justice Krishna Iyer, had said so. Yes. And it says, if you're a good chartered accountant, planning. If you are a powerful man, it is avoidance. If you are vulnerable, then you know, sir, wrath of law. Similarly, I say, line is thin. But this thin line is between democracy and despotism. To still your minds, how can in a country like ours or in any democracy, by statutory prescription, Chief Justice of India participates in the selection of the CBI director? Can there be any legal rationale for it? I can appreciate that statutory prescription took shape because executive of the day yielded to a judicial verdict. But time has come to revisit. This surely does not merge with democracy. How can we involve Chief Justice of India with any executive appointment? I have no doubt the nation is on way to emerging as a developed nation. For the first time, Bharat is not a nation with a potential. Potential is getting harnessed and exploited day in and day out. Viksit Bharat is not our dream. It is a definitive object we are bound to achieve. But this requires earnest, coordinated functioning of the three vital institutions. And I therefore strongly suggest evolution of a structured dialogue mechanism must be there for inter-institutional coordination. Thereby national interest will be served. Constitutional consultations, we must have a protocol for the same. Sir, the blurring line again between judicial review, which you are aware was evolved in the American Supreme Court long back. It was known as martial era. It's very blurred. Judicial review and judicial overreach. Let me invite attention of all of you. In 1869, Supreme Court of America, that before 1869 had judges varying in number, 6, 8, but his strength was in single digit. 1869 they decided 8 judges. Today there are 8 judges. All the 8 judges sit together with quorum being 6. They have no pendency. It It is this place where you can examine that the jurisdiction of the American Supreme Court is nearly the same as our jurisdiction. Is there a matter in judicial domain which lies exclusively with the magistrate or a district judge or the High Court, not being dealt by the Supreme Court? The structure of the Constitution is very categorical. Judicial governance is left to the high courts in their areas. There's a constitutional prescription. All subordinate courts and tribunals in the jurisdictional area of the High Court are subject to the control of the High Court. But there is no similar control of the Supreme Court either of the High Courts or subordinate judiciary. When I analyze the disposals, sir, to play and fudge with figures is very dangerous because we are monetizing ignorance of the people. If informed minds get into the habit of exploiting the ignorance of others, nothing can be more dangerous than this. I have examined the recent 2 volumes sent by the Supreme Court Registry. The disposal has to be 2 facets. 1, dismissal at the threshold of Article 136. That is largely the disposal. The disposal after leave is granted or otherwise statutory appeals are there is the only real disposal. And how can there be disposal when in a country unknown to the other dispensations in the world, we have a PIL court, we have so much cognizance. Day in and day out, we are appointing committees, SITs, groups. I wouldn't say more, sir, except executive decision making. The autonomy is not autonomy. The autonomy comes with a great sense of accountability, and that accountability is enforceable rigorously and on occasions in a stringent way by several agencies that virtually are at the neck of the bureaucrats or politicians deciding it. Let us preserve it. Parliamentary supremacy in lawmaking, I concede, is subject to judicial review. It's a good thing. The judicial review has to be on the anvil that the legislation is in conformity with the Constitution. But when it comes to making an amendment in the Indian Constitution, the ultimate repository, the ultimate power, the ultimate authority, and the last authority is only the Indian Parliament. There can be no intervention from any quarter whatsoever, on any pretext whatsoever, because will of the people is reflected in a representative manner on the most sanctified platform through elections. Sir, the world and the nation face existential challenges today. Our institutions cannot afford to be standalone. Our institutions cannot believe as being a repository of an authority dictating others how to conduct their affairs. Neither legislature can do it, nor any other institution. Climate change means a global existential challenge. Within our country, we have challenges of illegal migrants, demographic dislocations. These are not small issues. Conversion through allurements. These issues must engage our attention. We have to find solution to the problems and neutralize these menacing forces that of sinister design are activating perniciously anti-national narratives. I conclude, time has come for each one of us individually and for each institution collectively to introspect, reform, and return to the constitutional groove as envisioned by our founding fathers, ensuring democracy's sustainable growth through proper jurisdictional deference and coordination. I am grateful for the patient hearings, and I am sure this institution will emerge as a think tank to discuss issues because there is no other platform. To sum up, I have reflected only on tip of the iceberg. Thank you so much.